Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. The world had changed, and not for the better. Jack Martin stood at the edge of what was once a thriving city, now reduced to rubble, a ghost of its former self. A gust of wind kicked up dust and debris, and Jack's tired eyes traced the horizon, the setting sun casting a blood-orange hue across the crumbling skyline. Earth was dying, and its people, or what was left of them, had all but given up. The new government had made its choice: abandon the planet, abandon their home, and look to the stars for salvation. But not Jack. Earth was his home, and he wasn't too about to let it go without a fight. President Martin, a voice called from behind him. Jack turned, the weight of his years and the burden of the fight etched into every line on his face. It was Lara Miles, his most trusted ally, standing with her hands on her hips, her brow furrowed with concern. "We've a movement on the east side. The Thrak are sending in more scouts." Jack nodded, his eyes narrowing. The Thrak, warlike alien race, had seen Earth's abandonment as an opportunity. The planet's riches were still worth fighting for, even if the humans had fled. Jack had known this day would come. He had warned the government, pleaded with them to protect their home, but they had chosen the colonies, leaving Earth to whatever fate might come. "Get the team ready," Jack said, his voice low and steady. "You can too let them push any further." Lara nodded and jogged off, her boots crunching on the gravel. She was tougher than most men Jack had served with in his years as president and before that in the military. He trusted her with his life, and right now that meant everything. They were a small group, barely 24 volunteers, each one dedicated to the idea that Earth was more than just a rock to be mined or a battleground to be won. It was their home, and they would defend it to the last breath. As Jack moved back toward their makeshift base, an old military outpost buried deep within the ruins, he couldn't help but think about the irony of it all. Just a few years ago, he'd been president, the leader of the free world. He had stood on the global stage, his words carrying weight across nations. Now he was little more than a relic himself, a forgotten man leading a forgotten fight on a dying planet. But Jack didn't mind. He didn't need glory or recognition. All he needed was to protect what mattered. Inside the outpost, the mood was tense. The group had been living on the edge for months now, always moving, always watching. Supplies were scarce, and the constant threat of Thrak attacks made rest impossible. Jack found Dr. Alexander Moore hunched over a table, his face illuminated by the faint glow of a holographic map. Moore was a brilliant scientist, one of the few who had chosen to stay behind. His research was the only hope Earth had left. Any progress stacking closer. Moore didn't look up, his fingers flying over the controls as he adjusted the map's display. Avdem pinpointed the location of the energy source. "Halid," he said, his voice tight with focus. "It's buried deep beneath the old city, right under the Thrak's primary landing zone. If we can access it, we might have a chance to use it against them. But it's unstable. One wrong move and it could destroy what's left of this planet." Jack exhaled sharply. "We don't have many options. If we don't stop them, I'll strip Earth bare." "I know," Moore said, finally meeting Jack's gaze, "but I need more time. If I can figure out how to stabilize the energy, we might be able to not just stop the Thrak, but start healing this planet." "Time isn't something we have a lot of, Alex." Jack said, his voice grim. "They were getting closer every day." Moore nodded, his eyes dark with worry. I'll do what I can." Jack clapped a hand on the scientist's side shoulder. "I know you will." Just then, Lara burst into the room, her expression hard. "Jack, the Vayfin started a ground assault. We need to move." Jack didn't hesitate. He grabbed his rifle, slinging it over his shoulder as he headed for the exit tray. "Let's go." Outside, the ground trembled with the distant thuds of heavy artillery. Jack's heart pounded in his chest, but it wasn't fear, it was the thrill of the fight. He had been through worse, and he knew his team was ready. They had to be. As they reached the outer perimeter, he saw the Thrak forces advancing, their tall armored figures moving with lethal precision. Jack raised his weapon, his voice a sharp command. "Hold your ground. We're not letting them through." The first wave hit hard, the Thrak using their superior technology to hammer the human defenses. But Jack's team was resourceful. Lara led the charge, darting between cover and taking out enemy scouts with ruthless efficiency. Explosions lit up the night sky, and the air was thick with the smell of burning metal and scorched earth. As the battle raged on, Jack found himself face to face with one of the three commanders, a towering figure with glowing red eyes and a blade that hummed with energy. The alien moved with terrifying speed, but Jack had years of experience on his side. He dodged the first strike, his rifle coming up in a swift arc. The blast hit the Threek square in the chest, but it barely staggered. The alien growled, its blade slicing through the air again, this time grazing Jack's arm. Pain shot through him, but Jack didn't back down. He fired again, this time aiming for the head. The Threek stumbled, and Jack didn't waste the opportunity. With a final determined shot, the alien fell, its body hitting the ground with a heavy thud. Around him, the battle was turning. Lara's squad had managed to push the Threek back, but Jack knew it was only a matter of time before they regrouped. He wiped the blood from his arm and looked out over the battlefield, his mind racing. "We need to fall back to the city," he called to Lara as she approached, her face streaked with dirt and sweat. She nodded, breathing hard. "We can hold them off much longer. They were too well equipped." Jack gritted his teeth. "We'll make our stand in the ruins. More needs more time, and we can't just let them get to that energy source." They began the retreat, moving quickly through the twisted wreckage of the old city. The Thrick didn't follow immediately, but Jack knew they would be back, and in greater number. As they reached the inner part of the city, the group took cover in what was once a grand hall, now little more than a shell of cracked marble and broken glass. Moore was already there, working furiously on a portable console. The energy source was close, buried deep beneath them, but it was still beyond their reach. Jack crouched beside him, watching as the scientist worked. "How much longer?" Jack asked, his voice tight. Moore shook his head. "I don't know. This technology is ancient, and I am barely scratching the surface of its potential." "We don't have how much time," Jack said, glancing back at the entrance. "Right there. I'll be here soon." Moore's fingers flew across the controls, and suddenly the ground beneath them rumbled. Jack's eyes widened as a massive glowing pillar of energy burst through the floor, pulsing with a strange, otherworldly light. The entire building shook, and Jack could feel the power radiating from the source. "I think I've done it," Moore said, his voice filled with awe. But before Jack could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the hall. The Thrick had found them. Jack spun around, his pulse quickening as the sound of the Threek's sudden approach grew louder. The once hollow hull now, pulsating with energy from the source Moore had activated, was about to become their last stand. Lara was already at the entrance, her rifle aimed and ready, eyes locked on the shadowy figures creeping closer through the debris. She gave Jack a sharp nod, signaling she was prepared for whatever was coming. "We have to protect the source at all costs," Jack said, his voice steady despite the situation. He gripped his rifle tighter, the weight of the moment settling on his shoulder. Moore remained at the console, frantically adjusting parameters on the energy pillar that pulsed brighter with each passing second. Jack wasn't sure if the source would work in their favor or blow them all to pieces, but at this point they had no other choice. The Threek would kill them whether they succeeded or failed, and the fate of Earth hung in the balance. The first Throck soldier stepped into the hall, its hulking figure framed against the pale light filtering through the shattered window. Without hesitation, Lara squeezed the trigger. Her shot hit the alien square in the chest, but its thick armor absorbed the impact. The Threek barely flinched before charging forward, more of its kind spilling in behind it. "Fall back," Jack yelled, firing off rounds as he retreated further into the hall. He and Lara ducked behind broken columns, taking cover as the Threek advanced. The air was filled with the deafening sounds of gunfire and the low hum of the energy source as it fluctuated wildly behind them. Moore cursed under his breath, working desperately to stabilize the energy. "This is out of control," he shouted, sweat dripping from his brow. "The I can contain it? You'll all be vaporized." Jack fired off another shot, taking down a Threek soldier as it barreled toward them. "Stay, then you better figure it out fast. ... The Threek kept coming, their numbers seemingly endless. Jack's team was skilled, but they were outmatched in both firepower and manpower. The invaders moved with precision, using their advanced weapons to blast through what remained of the hull, set crumbling architecture. But for every Threek they took out, two more seemed to take their place. Jack's heart pounded as he realized how close they were to being overrun. They couldn't hold the line much longer. Jack, they were going to breach the perimeter, Herrera called out, her voice strained. Jack clenched his jaw, scanning the room for options. Moore, is there anything that damn thing can do to help us? Morse's fingers danced across the console, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and determination. Trying, I think I can overload it, but I need more time. Time is something we don't see, reach out, Jack shouted back, but before he could say more, a deafening roar echoed through the hall. Jack's head snapped up just in time to see General Kartan, the threat commander, step into the hall. Towering above his soldiers, Katartala's red eyes gleamed with malice as he surveyed the scene. The Thrick leader moved with a slow, deliberate menace, his massive frame practically glowing with the power of the energy blade he carried. He barked something in his alien language and his troops fell back, forming a perimeter around the room. Karatawe, Jack muttered under his breath. He had heard stories about the Thrick commander, tales of entire planets being razed under his leadership. And now he was here, standing in the ruins of Earth, ready to claim what was left. Jack rose to his feet, his rifle steady in his hands, though he knew it wouldn't be enough. Tao's was unlike any foe he had ever faced. Tao's eyes locked onto Jack, and for a moment, the room seemed to still. Then, in a voice that was disturbingly calm, the threat commander spoke in flawless English. Your resistance is futile, human. Surrender the energy source, and I will grant you a swift death. Jack's grip tightened on his rifle, but he didn't waver. Tariff isn't yours to take. Tao tilted his head, amused. Hers has already been abandoned by your kind. You cling to a dead planet. It will be our empires now. Before Jack could respond, Tao moved with lightning speed. The commander's blade slashed through the air, aimed directly at Jack. Jack barely managed to dodge, rolling to the side as the blade sliced through the column where he had been standing. The impact sent chunks of marble flying, but Jack didn't stop to think. He fired a volley of shots at Tao, but the Thrick leader deflected them with ease, his armor shimmering with some kind of energy shield. The room erupted into chaos once more as Tao's soldiers advanced. Jack could hear Lara shouting orders, her voice barely audible over the din of battle. Moore was still working frantically at the console, his face pale as the energy pillar grew brighter and more erratic. You're running out of time, Jack, Moore called out, his voice trembling. Miri, I need another minute or this thing is going to blow. Jack's pulse raced. They didn't have another minute. Tao lunged at him again, and this time Jack wasn't tough enough. The blade grazed his side, cutting through his armor and drawing a searing line of pain across his ribs. He gritted his teeth, refusing to go down. This wasn't how it ended. Not here. As Tao raised his blade for the killing blow, Lara came out of nowhere, firing a concentrated burst at the third commander, Sci-Fi. The shot hit Tao's shield, causing it to flicker for a split second, just long enough for Jack to take advantage. With everything he had left, Jack fired his rifle directly into the commander's exposed chest. Kula staggered, his massive frame shuddering as the shots hit home. But it wasn't high enough to stop him. With a roar of rage, he swung his blade, knocking Jack to the ground. The world spun and Jack's cells vision blurred as the pain in his side flared white hot. Then, as if in slow motion, Jack saw Moore at the console, his hands shaking as he pressed one final sequence. The energy pillar roared to life, its light blinding as it reached a critical mass. Jack, get down, Moore screamed. Jack barely had time to react before the entire hall was engulfed in a brilliant, searing wave of energy. The force of the blast knocked him back, slamming him into the ground. The heat was unbearable, the air crackling with raw power as the energy from the source erupted in every direction. For a moment it felt like the world was ending. When the light finally dimmed and the dust began to settle, Jack opened his eye. The Thrick soldiers were gone, vaporized by the explosion. The hall was in ruins, its walls crumbling, and the energy source, once a pulsing pillar of light, was now a faint glow in the center of the room. Lara staggered over to him, her face pale but alive. We did it! She said, her voice hoarse. Jack sat up slowly, wincing at the pain in his side.
Worse, Towie, more.
I'm here, Moore said, stepping forward from the console, his face smeared with soot. I managed to contain it. The energy is stabilizing. It'll take time, but I think Earth might actually have a chance now. Jack let out a long breath, the weight of everything finally crashing down on him. They had done it against all odds. They had defended Earth, their home. As he looked out over the ruins, Jack felt a strange sense of peace. The fight wasn't over, not by a long shot, but for the first time in a long time there was hope, and that was something worth fighting for.